Hi, I'm Kim Tasso. As the COVID restrictions finally start to ease and things are starting to open up again, we're seeing our first in-person networking events coming back into our calendars, which is very exciting. So it seemed a good time to share some tips with you about networking effectiveness back in person again. I do lots of training sessions in this area, anything from an hour to like half a day, looking at all sorts of different topics. But this is just a short video, about 10 minutes or so. So I'm going to try and put in as much as I can, the key tips, and there's signposts to lots of other resources for you. To make it memorable, I'm going to use looking at 5 areas, all with P's. That's plan, prepare, perform, produce, and persist. Lots of P's. Okay, so the first one is around plan, and I'm using a calendar to remind you about the need to plan. Now, in the word networking is embedded the word work, and the work starts before you even get to the event. So you need to do some really good preparation if your networking is to be effective. And there's lots of different reasons why you might want to be doing some networking. You may want to meet particular people. Those are people who you've already met and want to reconnect with, or it may be new people who you've targeted that you want to build a relationship with. It may be just to increase your network, to expand your horizons and to add some new and interesting people into your world, maybe whether that's influencers or referrers or key people in your industry. Having a strong network of good connections is kind of like a career currency. It's really valuable to you. It might be that you want to learn stuff. Networking is a great place to find out what's going on in the industry, what your competitors are doing, what's worrying clients, and the property industry is particularly good at communicating and learning stuff through networking. It may be that you want to kind of fly a flag for your firm to raise your profile, to ensure that you and your firm are represented in the important communities that you want to be in. Ideally, networking should be an integral part of your overall marketing and business development plan, so that you know who you want to meet and why you want to meet them and where might be the best place to get to meet them. And then what also your key messages might be when you do actually connect with them. Your messages or your personal brand need to be reflected in your web biography and your social media profiles, and that will take a little bit of any content you share. So you'll need to plan and prepare that before you get out networking. And whatever your reasons are for networking, it'll be good if you set some objectives, both long-term and short-term, because that way you'll be able to track your progress and also work out whether your networking's been effective. Networking isn't magic. It's rare that it produces results overnight. So manage your expectations, be prepared to commit some time and energy to it and to keep at it for a while in order for it to be effective. So the second area that I have is in terms of preparing, and I have a collection of newspapers and magazines we'll have a look at a moment as a reminder for that. If you're going to give your time to go to a networking event, and it seems only right that you invest some time before you go to make sure that your time spent at the networking event is going to work well for you. So do some research before you go to the event. Find out about the organizer, find out about the speakers, find out about the occasion, think about who will be attending, and think about who might you know. And social media is great to find out about all this stuff before you go along. And then you need to think about what they'll be talking about, what's going on in their businesses and markets, and what's going on in yours, and what's the business news and the industry news. Make sure you're aware of any commercial points as well. So for my example, recent events, obviously I had some current affairs, different balances, different views. Obviously you'll be looking also digitally, I expect. The Economist, always good for keeping you up to date with what's going on in the business world. If you're in the science sectors, something like that. And again, my one recently was in Middle Eastern businesses, so there are magazines for that. So make sure you've used lots of sources before you go and do your networking. So prepare also how you're going to introduce yourself. There's guidance on the Shrek model or the 3x3 matrix, but also you need to tailor your introduction to the events you're at and the people you're meeting. And are you going to be a good ambassador for your firm? What are the news headlines around your firm? What's key developments if you report it on your website or on your social media accounts. So make sure you know what's going on across your firm. You also need to prepare yourself mentally. If you think positively, that will be conveyed in your non-verbal communication. And similarly, if you're thinking really negatively about your networking, that too will come out and you'll be kind of left on your own and people avoid you. Okay, so the next one is around P for perform. Here I have a butterfly. Notice I found a butterfly with a red star in it. Anyway, once you're at the event, you'll need to move gracefully around the room like a social butterfly. Okay, so that's your kind of, oh, sorry, he's got his face here. Happy social butterfly. So once you're there, some people like to go early and catch with the other early arrivers. Other people prefer to go late and stay to those that are really committed networkers. Don't feel you have to network on your own. Take a colleague and hunt in a pack. And with someone who's a slightly different personality or style to you, there's guidance on reading the non-verbal communication of the people you meet, so you can kind of infer their personality and then adapt your behaviour accordingly. But with a colleague by your side, you've increased the chances that you will have some chemistry with the person you're meeting, and it also takes your pressure off you a bit on your own. First impressions form really quickly, so make sure you exude confidence and warmth. Perhaps rehearse some opening statements, opening questions that feel quite natural to you. You have to make a connection really quickly when you meet someone, so use questions to explore their views and listen really intently to their answers. Ask further questions to keep the conversation going, but make sure you balance it with some information yourself, otherwise you'll appear like the Spanish Inquisition, or as I call it, the American processor model. Okay, so non-verbal communication, really important. How you say things will often be more important than what you say. So be positive and enthusiastic and animated, and maintain that eye contact. There's nothing worse at a networking event when someone knows that you're kind of looking over their shoulder, scanning the room for who next to talk to. Really off-putting. However, remember that non-verbal communication is culturally dependent. So if you're networking in a really diverse international environment, you'll need to understand the differences so that you avoid misinterpretation. Just because people look alike doesn't mean to see the same. I never forget a situation where I was networking with some Americans, and it was very different, even though we all looked and sounded the same. So remember, the non-verbal communication can be different. Often you'll start with a kind of a really kind of informal social conversation, maybe about the event or the speaker, or the environment you're in. But if you get to a business conversation, try to convey the 2 or 3 key things you want them to remember about you. Stories are remembered some 22 times better than facts and figures, so prepare some stories before you go to the event. And remember that in a short interaction lasting just a few minutes, you have a lot to do. You need to have some form of connection, you need to have a good time, a good chat, you need to identify a reason to reconnect after the event. It's the entire sales process condensed into a really short period of time. And your job, it's a bit like being a detective, is to identify what they might need or be interested in, so you can take the relationship forward. So again, in this little diagram I have here, you can see all the things you have to achieve in that short networking interaction in order to do the following up and build the relationship afterwards. Moving between groups is something that often causes people anxiety, but you can always take the person you're talking to over to join other people. There's something in non-verbal communication, eyebrow flash, which you can use to show recognition and to kind of gain permission to join another group. Even monkeys do that eyebrow flash. Another tactic is to seek out groups of 3 people sitting, standing, or loosely, not too close together, because that's kind of a sign that they're quite happy for people to join us. And then when you join a loose 3, you kind of create 2 couples and doesn't leave anybody out in the cold. Another tactic that I use, and I have here a sheepdog. I do have a live one, but he's on the wall, but he's too bouncy for videos. Anyway, so this is a sheepdog tactic. Basically, it means going around the edges of the room and rounding up the kind of strays. Sometimes they're very pleased to be rescued from being on their own. Okay, so the next P is for produce, and I've got a hand here. Okay, giving something, and we're going to see about that in a moment. But during your networking interactions, you need to produce a favourable impression in the people you meet and form a connection. And of course, the interaction needs to be enjoyable and useful, because obviously they're not going to contact with someone again afterwards if it wasn't. You need to introduce yourself, in a way that leaves people with a good memory of you, and so they know the 2 or 3 things that they would pick up the phone or ping you an email if it came up in the future. There's a saying about givers gain as well. You need to become known as someone who's generous with your time and ideas and connections. Evoke the reciprocity effect by giving first, so that they feel they have to kind of pay you back at some time. They also build your favour bank for the future. So following up is much easier if you agree that you were doing this, during the networking interaction. So agree, for some reason for doing that. Try to avoid a high commitment follow-up connection like a lunch. Find something a bit less onerous, like that you agree to send some information or introduce them to a colleague. And as soon as you come out of the networking interaction, go and make some notes so you remember what you talked about and what you've agreed is going to happen. Okay, so then we come up with persist. That's my final P. And here I have social media playing a really important part in your persisting. So immediately after the event, you need to enter the person's contact details in your contact system or your CRM or on social media, form the connection. But remember the GDPR rules before you put in too many personal details. You might also grade or prioritize them so that you know who you've got to go to immediately to follow up, and others where you might be able to leave them on the database for your firm's emails and newsletters to kind of keep them in the loop. And check to see if there's anyone else in your firm you need to alert that you've made that connection, if in case they know them already. Follow their accounts on social media and share and like their posts where relevant, and use your social media posts and content and putting it out regularly so that you stay on their radar. And remember that in business-to-business situations, it can take from 5 to 10 contacts before you turn a contact into a client, and most people give up after 3. So that's why I said be persistent. Okay, so for some further help on networking, and I'll give the links in the video to this, I've got 2 books on networking. One is by Will Kintish, who's from Manchester and a former accountant. That's a really great book. And the other one is by Nick Davis, who's also from Manchester and is a former barrister and also a former stand-up comic. So that's a great read there, quite light. So get some more help and some more guidance on your networking before you go out there. So happy networking. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and hopefully I'll see you at an event soon. Bye now.